Hey guys, how you doing? So, PVZ2 differs from PVZ1 in quite a few ways. Some of these ways are trivial, such as overall layout and worlds, and other ways are pretty major, such as new mechanics. All of this is to say that today we'll be using one of these new features to a pretty extreme extent, that being the power mints. Power mints are, simply put, free plants that buff certain plant families, such as the appeasement boosting all plants in the appeasement family. And while that on its own isn't too interesting, what is interesting is the fact that each plant has a unique effect, and these effects are actually pretty helpful in gameplay. These effects have been tested in many ways, but for today, I want to push the boundaries of these plants, trying to answer one simple question. Can you complete PVZ2 using only power mints? So without any further ado, let's jump right in. Sort of. Okay, before we actually start, I think it's important to clarify the rules of this challenge. So to keep things simple, let's talk about what I can do. I can use every mint in the game, and along with that, any levels that require me to reach a sun production goal will be completed with one sun producer. If you're wondering why I have to make that exception, it's because those levels would be otherwise impossible. And in order to make an interesting video, I have to give myself some leeway. One last thing is that I can use plant food on any plant that's on the field, so plants that the level has naturally can be used to a certain extent. Okay, I think that's about it for that part. Now let's talk about what I can't do. I can't use power-ups in any way, I can't buy plant food, I can't use any plants that the game gives me in levels where power mints are usable, so Big Wave Beach is going to be very enjoyable, I'm sure. I also can't level up any plants either for obvious reasons. Again, Big Wave Beach is going to be a blast. And finally, I can't access any upgrades earlier than intended. What this means is that I won't be using the seed packet refresh or even 7 seed slots for a bit, so that should be pretty interesting. One last thing I should mention is that I won't be counting any levels that pick all of your seed packets for you and such. These levels could be modded to include the power mints, but realistically, if they're beatable normally, I don't think I'd be stretching too much to assume that they're beatable with the mints too. Plus, modding is hard. So, I think that just about covers it for now. I guess now I'll complete the vanilla tutorial as Minty YSI, and I'll let you guys know what happens in ancient Egypt. And it was done within an hour. Yep, I don't really know what you expected here. Modern ancient Egypt is gonna be modern. I mean, look at the level chart I made. The green levels are levels that force you to use the plants within the levels themselves, and you can see there's a lot of them. But regardless of how easy it might have been, this world does introduce some aspects of these levels that would become more of an issue later on. Stuff like the fact that I had to get good bombardment and peppermint RNG just to get the spearmint spike rocks in the front row whenever gravestones were on the lawn. That was pretty annoying. This world also introduces the idea that I can't use plant food to refresh seed packets until Wild West, and that's gonna get pretty frustrating pretty quickly. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, putting plant food on the spike rocks works well enough for getting stragglers. As for any particular difficulty in this world, there really wasn't any. The only level that was even slightly challenging was level 21, and that was only because it forces you to use 3 seed slots for other plants. Besides that, there isn't much more to report on. So instead of wasting time discussing this world, how about we just move on to... This world was interesting, and I'm not just saying that because of the difficulty spike. I'm more so saying that because this world showcases an oversight that makes it beatable, that being the fact that peppermint can burn seagull zombies. I don't know who forgot to make this plant more in line with other ground damaging plants, but I'm not complaining. Of course, that isn't the only thing we could talk about though. I'm sure you're wondering how I even managed to beat these levels with some of the lanes being completely absent. Well, I basically used any mint that could do damage in multiple areas, such as the previously mentioned peppermint, as well as bombardment, ailment, and even reinforcement at times. This strategy worked really well for pretty much every level in the world, except for the toughest 3. So this world is the first world where I actually got stuck on a level 19 in particular, and that's because of a couple of things. First of all, the sun goal. I had to come up with a pretty risky strategy with this one. At first, I tried no sun producers, but those attempts were so bad that I had to go back to get footage of me doing it because I didn't even bother recording it the first time around. So I just did it with sunflower and enlightenment, and with some good RNG, this level is just barely possible. So yeah, that was pretty rough. And then I basically did the same thing for levels 20 and 21. Fun. But besides that set of levels and level 24, because holy crap, that one got really close, I mostly breezed through this world. And I have a subtle feeling that the next world is gonna feel like more of the same, so let's move on to... This world was strange. So right out of the gate, this is the world that I spent the most time on so far, but it's not because of multiple hard levels or anything. Well, okay, there was one hard level, but we'll get there soon enough. This world was surprisingly fine for the most part. It was just a lot more time consuming. I mean, look at this. I had to play through multiple levels that were slow, tedious, and downright boring. It was a slog. And the worst part about it is that this was one of the easier worlds too. This world introduces the seed packet refresh feature, which is incredibly helpful, but you don't get that until the end of the world, so yeah. I will say this though, level 18 is borderline cruel. This particular level is such an easy one to beat if you have the seed packet refresh ability, but because it's right before the point where you get that, it's annoyingly difficult. I tried so many strategies with this one, but I'll tell you right now that it's pretty luck based. I ended up barely beating this level, and I really do mean that. If you try this challenge, then please try beating this level the way I did. You are not gonna have fun, but it feels very rewarding to complete. But overall, it was a fine world. Not much more to report on, so let's move on to this world wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. No, seriously. So this world was pretty long, and while normally that would be annoying, I actually think it works in this world's favor, as there's a lot more ground to cover with the level gimmicks. But regardless of what the game threw at me here, I mostly dealt with it. Icy Wind was dealt with by Peppermint, along with the Frozen Yeti Imps. The Dodos were dealt with by Bombardment, Ailment, and Old Reliable, and most of the gimmicks were handled with the 2 new rows of spike rocks. Ooh, that's nice. The hardest level in this world by far was this one level where you had to protect 3 Rotobagas. It's only difficult because you constantly have to micro Peppermints with how many Frozen Yeti Imps appear on the grid. It's annoying, but overall possible using some clever tactics. But besides that, not too bad of a world here. And I think something similar could be said about this one was the strangest world by far. It was overall not difficult, but it felt like most of the worst gimmicks were actively working against the mints. Shovel zombies shovel the spike rocks, multiple raid zombies and bug zombies can fly over or past my main defense, and the less said about the bag carrying imps, the better. It wasn't hard per se, but it wasn't ever a cakewalk either. There were quite a few levels here that were legitimately difficult, but I managed to one-shot a lot of them surprisingly. There was also a fair amount of levels where I couldn't even use mints, so that ended up making things even simpler for me. Overall, it was a nice refresher of a world, though definitely could have been harder. And I suppose that could also be said about this is the world where I actually thought I would lose this challenge. But, well, Peppermint, in all of its janky glory, can hit jetpack zombies. So yeah, that makes it one of the easiest worlds in this challenge. Don't get me wrong, it's still fairly tough at certain points, like this ridiculously hard sun producing level where I actually had to swap to Twin Sunflower to win. That was pretty tedious. But overall, the world itself didn't really make things too hard to counter besides jetpack zombies. You may have noticed it at this point, but my lineup of plants has stayed relatively consistent for most of the challenge run now, and that's simply because these are the optimal picks for a lot of levels. And with this world in particular, I almost never had to swap out plants, which was pretty nice. I'll give this world some credit for one particular aspect, and that's the amount of levels I'm able to use mints in. There's only 5 levels here where I wasn't able to pick mints, which was pretty low compared to other worlds. It made things a little more interesting in my opinion, even if the gameplay is relatively the same. Overall, this world was pretty cool. Not really difficult, but interesting. And that last bit is the perfect way to describe. And this is the challenge ending world. Whew, that is some crazy whiplash I'm feeling right about now. So most of this world is completely beatable normally. I don't think that's too shocking. But level 14 is unfortunately a different story. A very different story. Going by the rules here, I actually can't beat this level at all. To explain why, you need to first know the objective. And that's all about producing 5,000 sun. Not too bad, right? Well, you can't bring any sun producers of any kind, including enlightenment. You have sun gravestones that you can break, but it'll only total to around 1,000 sun short of the goal. And to top it all off, the game forces you to bring Sunbeam to make up for that lost sun. So it's impossible then. I'm not allowed to use Sunbeam in any capacity because it's not me that's bringing it in, it's the game. So yeah, that's it. Game over. You cannot complete Plants vs. Zombies 2 using only Power Mints. But how much of the game can you complete then? Well, let's find out. Ignoring level 14 of Dark Ages, the rest of the world is more than beatable. It's honestly one of the easiest worlds in the game with this challenge in mind, so that's pretty nice. As for Neon Mixtape Tour, this world was pretty okay for the most part. There were a couple of slightly challenging levels, but nothing too crazy. Absolutely beatable in our circumstances. Jurassic Marsh was pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Lots of small things in this world just snowballed into a big issue, such as the dinosaurs combined with the tankiness of some of the zombies here. But for the most part, this world was a relative cakewalk compared to Big Wave Beach. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I last completed PVZ2, so coming back to this world was a nasty surprise. Where do I even begin? Okay, so starting off simple here, the water. It sucks. The way I got around it for the most part was by placing spearmint spike rocks on temporary low tide waves or lily pads, and if I got desperate enough, the back of the lawn. That alone made this world very frustrating, but it only got worse from there. Surfer zombies were very frustrating to deal with, especially during the times when I didn't have a specific mint ready to counter them. Snorkel zombies are flat out unkillable by any mint when they're submerged, and don't even get me started on this guy. All of this and more makes this world suck, and that's not even talking about some of the levels themselves. There's a couple of levels here that are either really difficult or flat out impossible. Like, level 15 requires you to micromanage your defense so much to the point where it gets borderline annoying. And then there's level 28, and I mean, look at this! There wasn't a chance of me beating this. Imagine limiting the amount of mints you can use on top of the craziness that this world provides. It's rough. And finally, level 30. This one looks deceptively simple, yet it's anything but. The level itself requires that the crocodiles don't activate, as they are endangered here. Now, that would be relatively simple, but... oh yeah, this idiot exists. And somehow, I kept getting game overs because they hooked the crocodiles once. I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah, this one in particular could be possible, but if it is, then it's barely possible. And frankly, I don't have the patience for this world anymore, as I also happen to lose almost all of my footage for this world while making this video. So yeah, I'm done here. Luckily for me, the final world here is surprisingly not that bad, and that's modern day. It was overall challenging, but not impossible in any way. The only level that gave me any real trouble here was level 30, and even then, that was just because I couldn't get enough plant food to cheese my way through the flower goal. It's possible without that anyways, so I'm not too concerned about it. So overall, Plants vs. Zombies 2 isn't completable using these mints, but I'll tell you this much. For being the plants they are, only having 3 unbeatable levels is not a bad track record in the slightest. Some plant groups can't even beat single worlds, let alone nearly the full game. It's quite impressive, and I'll give these plants credit where credit is deserved. And with that, I'll be ending this video here. Thank you so much for watching until the end, I really do appreciate it. This idea has been on my mind for literal months at this point, but I couldn't bring myself to deleting my old PVZ2 save on my PC just to get footage for the video. But regardless, I'm glad I did, because this was quite an adventure. If you guys like this video and you want to see more of this type of content in the future, then subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Let me know what your thoughts are on this challenge in the comments, and I'll see you guys on my next video. Peace.